47. And so, clad in robe of purest white, adorned with golden bands about the waist, and on my head a golden net, bedight with crimson tassels, in her style and taste, hearing the signal, I stepped forth to sigh on the veranda, and myself so placed that from the house where rlnd was hidden, I could be plainly seen as I was bidden. 48. Lurciano, meanwhile, remained in doubt and fearful for the safety of his brother, or, it may be, desiring to find out the cause of all the mystery and bother, resolved to see what it was all about. So, in the dark, with stealthy steps, the other house he entered, coming within a yard or two of rlnd, and there stood guard. 49. Of these maneuvers, wholly unaware, I stood on the veranda, in the dress I have described, thanks to the moonlight there, which made me plainly visible, no less than to the similarity I bear in figure and in looks to the princess, my face for hers being easily mistaken, misgivings in her lover's breast awaken. 50. The more so, as considerable space parted the balcony from where he stood in darkness near his brother in that place, and thus it was that Polonicio could deceive the wretched lover, whose sad case may be imagined and well understood. Then Polonicio up the ladder climbs, and as he has done before so many times. 51. And straightway, as my fond custom is, I throw my arms about my lover's neck, his mouth, his face, repeatedly I kiss. He, in response, his ardor does not check. Every caress intensifies our bliss. Dejected, rlnd sees the wreck of all his dearest hope, as he believes, and bitter disillusionment receives. 52. His sorrow is so great that he decides to take his life, and on the ground his sword its pommel downward sets, that his insides upon its point the better may be gored. Lurciano, amazed with mighty strides, having this fell design observed, towards his brother leapt. He'd seen the Duke's ascent, but knew not who we were, nor what it meant. 53. And he forbade him thus to immolate himself. If he had moved more slowly or stood farther off, he would have been too late. Brother, he cried, why do you thus abhor yourself? What has reduced you to this state? Have you quite lost the wits you had of yore? You let a woman drive you to your death? All this he shouted in a single breath. 54. Perish all women! This faithless jade, in whom you put your trust, deserves to die. As once you loved her, do not be afraid to hate her. For the sake of honor, try some worthy cause, and this your trusty blade, which now you turn against yourself, put by to serve you when you bring this deed to light before your lord, the king, in lawful fight. 55. Seeing his brother standing there beside him, from his harsh plan the elder now desists, but unabated, secretly inside him, his desperate intention still persists. Now that he deems Ginevra's love denied him, he thinks no reason for his life exists, yet to his brother bravely plays the part of one who feels no sorrow in his heart. 56. Next day, without a word to anyone, being driven by a mortal desperation, his purpose even to himself unknown, he left for an uncertain destination. The riddle as to why or where he'd gone became the topic of much conversation among the members of the Scottish court, who put forth theories of every sort. 57. After 8 days or more they saw advance a stranger who the princess came to find. He brought her tidings of rlnd's demise, that he was drowned, not by the wind capsized, nor had he perished by mischance. To his own death he had himself consigned. From a high precipice, dejected, he had flung himself head first into the sea. 58. Before he did this deed, the stranger said, I met him quite by chance upon my way. At his request, I followed where he led. I want you, he explained to me, to say to the princess on whose account I fled, that what you are about to see today, I have been driven to because I've seen too much. Ah, happier if blind I'd been. 59. We came just then by chance to where there is, opposite Ireland, a high promontory, and from the summit of that precipice he plunged, as I have said, into the sea. So, to fulfill the last request of his, I left him there and set out speedily. Genevieve, Genevra, Ginevra, in dismay, turns deathly pale at the recital of this grievous tale. 60. How she despaired, alas, and how she cried! Soon as she gained the refuge of her bed, she beat her breast, she rent her garments wide, she tore her golden tresses from her head, and oft she repeated, mystified, those last reproachful words which he had said, that he was driven by his grief to such a grievous death because he'd seen too much. 61. Through all the land there travelled the report of Arodante's broken-hearted leap. Each cavalier, each lady of the court, the king himself could scarce forbear to weep. Lorcano's sorrow was of such a sort, the pain of his fraternal heart so deep, to follow his brother's steps he yearned, and on himself his sword he all but turned. 62. Many a time he muttered through clenched teeth, by that intrigue of hers, Genevieve drove my brother from his mind, and to his death, soon as he saw how faithless was her love. Desire for vengeance grew with every breath, anger and grief together in him strove. For kings and people's wrath he cared little, he'd bring to light the truth of the affair. 63. Before the throne, being careful first to wait until the chamber filled with courtiers was, he said, my lord, you well know my late lamented brother, disregarding laws of reason, killed himself. Of his sad fate your daughter is the one and only cause, for by her conduct faithless and unchaste, his youth and life she drove him thus to waste. 64. He loved her, and as no dishonor stained his love, to tell you all is my intent. By virtuous deeds his hope was to have gained her as his lawful wife, with your consent. Alas, while at a distance he remained, grateful if he might sometimes breathe the scent of foliage, he saw one climb the tree and pluck the longed-for fruit clandestinely. 65. Proceeding with his tale, he then related how he had seen her let the ladder down to where her paramour below had waited. This man's identity remained unknown. He had disguised himself, Lorcano stated, with hair concealed and clothing not his own. He was prepared by means of his good blade to verify the truth of all he said. 66. You can imagine then her father's grief when such an accusation he has heard. Not only was it passing all belief, and in his breast a deep amazement stirred, but well he knew and understood that if in her defense no champion appeared, able to give Lorcano the lie, he must condemn the fair princess to die. 67. I do not doubt that you have heard, kind sir, of this our law which thus condemns a maid or married woman who in love may err or give herself outside the marriage bed to die unless a valiant cavalier before a month elapses offers aid, proving her innocent, and in the teeth of her accuser saving her from death. 68. The king had sent his herald far and wide, for he believes his daughter innocent, to say he will bestow her as a bride on her who makes a handsome settlement, to any knight who rallies to her side, and clears her of this infamy. So went his proclamation, but response is slow, so fierce the bearing of Lorcanio. 69. Her brother, Prince Zerbino, by ill chance, is absent from the kingdom. For some time he has been giving proof of his good lance, gaining renown in a far distant clime. If he were near enough, he'd come at once, or if the news could be dispatched to him within a month, he would not fail his sister, but in her present peril would assist her. 70. The king, meanwhile, attempts to ascertain by other proofs and arms, if false or true the accusation is, and if the pain of shameful death his child must undergo. So, hoping further evidence to gain, he asked her maids in waiting what they knew. I understood that if he questioned me, the duke and I would be in jeopardy. 71. Departing from the court that very night, I hastened where I hoped to find the duke, and straightway I warned him that I might be questioned but he uttered no rebuke. Rather he praised me and allayed my fright with many a kind word and a loving look, and bidding me take refuge in a fort, he chose 2 servitors as an escort. 72. By many tokens, as you know, my lord, I proved my passion was sincere, not feigned. How truly Polonicio I adored, how much he owed to me, I have explained. Now hear what I received as a reward. Now see what my devotion to him gained, and judge if any woman in return for love's recompense can hope to earn. 73. Ungrateful, cruel, and perdiferous, no pity or remorse he seems to feel, and of my loyalty now dubious, he fears that in the end I may reveal his whole intrigue so sly and devious. Thus, feigning that his aim is to conceal me in a fort for safety, he pretends my welfare, but my death is in truth intends. 74. In secret those 2 ruffians he instructed, that when they brought me to a certain spot where he designed that I should be abducted, they were to kill me, and this gruesome plot, if by my cries you shall not have been conducted, would have succeeded. Such, then, is the lot of those who truly love. So ends her tale, related as they ride up hill, down dale. 75. Of all adventures which had come his way, this pleased Ronaldo most, when he had heard all that the maid-in-waiting had to say. He was convinced Ginevra had not erred. Her innocence was now as clear as day, and if at first Ronaldo was prepared to be her champion, whether right or wrong, now all the more his bold resolve grew strong. 76. Towards St. Andrew's city, where the king and all his courtiers assembled were, to watch the singular event, a thing more strange than this they'd seldom seen occur, Ronaldo galloped at full speed to bring assistance in the role of challenger, and on the journey near the citadel he met a squire who had fresh news to tell. 77. A stranger had arrived to champion Ginevra in her undeserved disgrace. The markings on his banner were unknown, giving no hint of family or race. Wherever he went, he kept his visor down. Thus nobody so far had seen his face, not his own shield-bearer, who night and day attended him, his origin could say. 78. Then on they went, and after riding hard, they saw the city walls against the sky. Delinda was afraid to pass the ward, but for Ronaldo put misgivings by. As they approached, they saw the gate was barred. Ronaldo asked, "What does this signify?" He was informed that all the populace had flocked to where the combat would take place. 79. Between Lorcano and the unknown knight, across the city on the farther side, where on a plain they had begun to fight, at Montalbano's name the gates flew wide, and straightway behind him was locked tight. Then, with Delinda having passed inside, he leaves her at an inn, as she entreats, before he gallops off through empty streets. 80. In words of comfort, bidding her adieu, he promised he would soon return to her, then speedily rode off to where he knew the warriors in deadly combat were. Much they had given and much taken too, both the accuser and the challenger, the one to prove Ginevra false intending, the other knight her good repute defending. 81. 6 knights attended them in the stockade. They were on foot, armed only in cuirass. The Duke of Albany was on parade, mounted on a destrier, as high constable the spectacle surveyed, that no untoward event might come to pass. With joy and arrogance his bosom swelled, when the princess in peril he beheld. 82. Between the serried ranks Ronaldo moves, his good Biardo scattering the fray, for at the thunder of his mighty hoofs not one for long will linger in the way. In his magnificent Ronaldo proves the most superb of all that vast array. Before the king's pavilion he draws rein, and all the multitudes flock round again. 83. Then to the king Ronaldo in this guise began his plea. "My lord, I pray to this dread combat call a halt. Whichever dies of the 2 combatants will die amiss. One thinks he has just cause, and yet he lies unknowingly. His that same error is which drove his brother to his tragic leap, and drives him now a false revenge to reap. 84. The other knows not if he is right or wrong. To his bold heart this is of no import, for that which moves a noble valiant knight is beauty in distress of any sort. But I to innocence now bring respite. I bring the opposite of false report. For God's sake, part these combatants, I pray, and then lend an ear to what I have to say. 85. By his authority and noble mien, and by his words, the monarch is impressed, and straightway to the constable is seen to give the needed signal to desist. To knights and barons gathered on the green, and all the company which round him pressed, Rinaldo then, withholding not one jot, revealed in full the villain's evil plot. 86. And next he offers, for he has no fears, to prove by arms what he says is true. They summon Polonicio, he appears, perturbed and undecided what to do. And when Rinaldo his denial hears, he shouts, Let deeds decide twixt me and you. They both are armed, all's ready for the fray. The combat can begin without delay. 87. Ah, how the king and all his people longed that the princess would be proved innocent, that God would clearly show she had been wronged by Polonicio with malign intent, for he was covetous of what belonged to others, cruel, proud, and fraudulent. That he should perpetrate such vile deception appeared in character, and no exception. 88. There on the jousting field he stands forlorn, with trembling heart, his cheeks an ashen grey. At the third blast upon the herald's horn he puts his lance in rest, and straightway Rinaldo rides headlong in mighty scorn, intending with one stroke to win the day. His expertise is equal to the test, his weapon pierces his opponent's breast. 89. Fixed in his trunk, it hurtles him to the ground. 6 yards at least from where his charger stands, Rinaldo leaves the saddle with one bound, and of the villain's helmet slits the bands. Further resistance useless now is found. He sues for mercy at Rinaldo's hands, and in the hearing of the court and king confesses he has done this dreadful thing. 90. He has not time to tell it all. His breath, his voice, his life are all at once cut short. The king, seeing his daughter freed from death and from the infamy of ill report, is overjoyed and more consoled with a loss restored to him of any sort, even his crown, supposing it were stolen. With joy and gratitude his heart is swollen. 91. And when he sees the champion remove his helmet, and Rinaldo stands revealed, knowing him as the son of Aemon of great valor, he gives thanks that such a shield as this his daughter's innocence should prove, then turns to him whose face is still concealed, that knight unknown who, in Guinevere's aid, challenged Lorcano with lance and blade. 892. Requested by the king to tell his name, or let at least his countenance be seen, that he may be rewarded as became a knight who so courageously had been inspired with such a noble gallant aim. He moves into the center of the scene, and there at last reveals what I'll make clear, if my next canto you are pleased to hear. End of Canto 5.